My wife cheated on me with our neighbor during our six-figure property dispute, then stole $200, $0 from our joint account. Now she's claiming half the house I built with my late father's inheritance. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to find out my wife was cheating on me, especially not in the middle of a messy property dispute that had already drained my patience and sanity. But the worst part, I caught her not through some obvious slip-up or a suspicious text. No, it was when I stumbled across something I never expected. A series of late-night texts, flirty and suggestive, between her and our neighbor, Jake. It was like a punch in the gut, but what really knocked the wind out of me was the fact that she lied about everything from the start. Her name's Lisa. She's a pretty woman, charming and bitchy in a way that used to turn me on. We'd been married for 6 years, and honestly, I thought we had a decent life. I worked my ass off building our house with my late father's inheritance, pouring everything I had into that place. It was supposed to be our dream home, a symbol of stability, a future I thought she was as invested in as I was. But then the cracks started showing. Small things at first. She'd be more distant, cancel plans, or get defensive when I asked where she'd been. I brushed it off, telling myself she was stressed or busy with her job, but deep down I sensed something was off. It all came crashing down one night when I decided to check our joint bank account after noticing some odd charges. I usually kept tabs on our money, especially given the property fight with Jake, our neighbor, over a plot of land that was supposed to be part of the estate. That's when I saw it. A withdrawal of $200, $0 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. My stomach sank. It was a huge sum, more than I could have imagined she'd take without telling me. I immediately suspected she was hiding something, but I had no proof. I needed to find out what was really going on. That same night, I installed a hidden app on her phone. I know creepy, but I was desperate. I needed to see what she was hiding, and what I saw confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of texts, mostly at night, between her and Jake. Flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up, about how good they made each other feel. The language was explicit enough that I could tell they'd been sleeping together. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just an emotional affair. It was physical, and it had been going on for a while. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted, was screwing our neighbor while I was pouring my soul into building this house, our future, and trying to settle our disputes over the property. And she lied to my face every time I asked questions about where she was or who she was with. She always had an excuse. She was working late, meeting friends, or dealing with stress. But now I knew the truth. She was cheating on me, and she had stolen a huge chunk of our savings to fund her little affair. The betrayal hit hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, then kicked while I was down. I was furious, hurt, and utterly betrayed. I confronted her the next day, and her reaction was classic Lisa: denial, gaslighting, and outright lies. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that Jake was just a friend, and that I was overreacting. She called me jealous and insecure, said I was accusing her of something she didn't do, all while her eyes kept darting around, trying to avoid my gaze. She insisted she loved me, that I was imagining the affair, that the money was just a misunderstanding. But I wasn't buying it. I knew the truth, and I was starting to see how much she'd been manipulating me. Her words didn't match her actions, and the way she tried to spin everything just made me angrier. I didn't want to believe she'd betray me like this, but the evidence was staring me right in the face. I felt sick, betrayed, and more alone than I ever had in my life. I realized I had to decide what to do next, but honestly, I was just trying to process the shock of it all. The woman I thought I knew was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, and I had no idea how to fix what was broken, or if I even. After confronting Lisa and hearing her pathetic excuses, I knew deep down that I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I'd always believed in honesty, in building something real, something that could withstand anything. But her lies, her betrayal, had shattered that belief. Still, I needed to get my facts straight before I made any decisions. I started digging into her phone, her emails, anything I could find. I wanted to know just how deep her deception went. What I uncovered was staggering. Not only was she sleeping with Jake, but she'd been doing it for months. The texts were full of promises, flirtations, and explicit talk. She'd even planned to leave with Jake once the property dispute was settled. She thought she could walk away with half the house, half my inheritance, and everything I'd built. That was the kicker. She wasn't just cheating, she was plotting to take everything I had, using her affair as a weapon. I felt like a fool for trusting her so blindly. The worst part was the money. That $200, $0 she took, she used some of it to pay for hotel rooms, gifts for Jake, and who knows what else. I found receipts hidden in her email drafts. She was planning her escape, probably to run off with Jake once she drained the bank account. The fact that she thought she could get away with it made me furious. I started to see her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd been using me from the start. I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I needed a plan. I decided to gather all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, the texts, and get legal advice. I wanted to make sure I had everything documented. I also wanted to find out exactly what her intentions were. I couldn't trust her anymore. I knew she'd lie her way out of this, so I had to be ready for anything. In the meantime, her behavior only got more bitchy and defensive. She started accusing me of spying on her, calling me paranoid, and trying to turn the tables. She said I was overreacting, that I was jealous and possessive, and that I was ruining everything. But I saw right through her. She was panicked because she knew I was onto her and she was trying to save herself. I could see the fear in her eyes when she realized I had all the evidence. That's when I decided I'd had enough. It was time to confront her properly. No more hiding, no more lies. One night I sat her down, everything laid out in front of her, screenshots of texts, bank statements, and recordings of her attempts to deny everything. I told her I knew the truth. Her face twisted, her bitchy smirk fading into genuine panic. She tried to deny it again, but I didn't buy her bullshit anymore. I told her I was done, that I'd be taking her to court and that she'd have to answer for what she'd done. I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. I was finally taking control, finally exposing her for who she was. That moment was the beginning of the end. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, and I knew I had to protect myself and what I'd built. The house, the inheritance, everything. She was trying to steal it all. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I'd fight for my rights, for the house I built with my own blood, sweat, and inheritance. And I was going to make damn sure she paid for her betrayal. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her destroy me or everything I'd worked for. After I gathered all the evidence and laid it out on the table, Lisa's bitchy facade cracked completely. She started to lose her temper, yelling, calling me paranoid, and insisting I was making everything up. But I wasn't about to be swayed anymore. I'd seen too much, and I knew her game. The woman who once smiled sweetly and played the victim was now revealing her true colors: selfish, manipulative, and willing to do anything to get her hands on the house and the money. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was filing for divorce and taking legal action to protect what was mine. That's when she threw a fit, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her life, that she loved me, and that I was overreacting. She even had the nerve to say that I was just jealous of Jake, that she'd only been with him for fun, and that I was insecure for suspecting her. Honestly, her words didn't even matter anymore. I could see right through her manipulations. I knew she'd been lying all along, just trying to cover her tracks. The shock kept hitting me in waves. I felt numb, then furious, then sad. I'd built everything with her, this house, a future, a life. And now I was faced with losing it all because of her greed and betrayal. I kept replaying the moments when she'd looked me in the eyes and lied, the times she'd dismissed my concerns, the way she'd turned everything around on me. It was like I'd been blind, but now I saw clearly. She was a user, a liar, and a thief. I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I'd contacted a lawyer the next day, someone who specialized in property disputes and divorce. I wanted to know my rights, how much of the house I could keep, how to deal with the stolen money, and what my options were for fighting her claims. The lawyer explained that I had a solid case, especially with the evidence I'd collected. The fact that she'd taken $200, $0 from our joint account without my consent was a clear violation. Plus, her attempts to claim half the house, constructed with my inheritance, were legally questionable. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could actually get her out of my life for good. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior got even more bitchy. She started accusing me of being controlling and paranoid, spinning stories about how I was ruining her reputation, and claiming I was just jealous of Jake and her freedom. She insisted she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that she'd never do anything to hurt me intentionally. But I knew better. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative woman who'd do anything to get her way. Her tears, her accusations, they were just her trying to save herself, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she needed to leave the house. I wasn't going to have her lying around, trying to spin her stories while I was trying to get everything sorted legally. She threw a tantrum, saying I was throwing her out like trash, that she had nowhere to go, and that I was ruining her life. But I didn't care. I was done playing nice. I told her she was free to leave, and if she didn't, I'd have the police escort her out. I could see her panic rising. She knew she'd pushed too far this time. That night I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The house was quiet, and I sat in the living room staring at the walls I'd built, the place I thought was our future. I knew this was just the beginning of a long battle. Lisa wasn't going down without a fight, and I wasn't about to let her take everything I'd worked for. I had to stay strong, stay focused. I realized that I was going to need every ounce of patience and resilience to get through what was coming next. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my house or my money. Not after everything. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Lisa refused to leave the house quietly. Instead, she threw herself into full-blown bitch mode, screaming, crying, and trying to guilt me into backing down. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was ruining her life, and that I had no right to kick her out after everything we'd been through. Her voice was shrill, her eyes wild with desperation, and honestly it was unsettling. She kept calling me controlling, paranoid, and said I was just jealous of Jake. That was her favorite line, blaming everything on me like I was the one with the problem. I stayed firm. I had the legal advice, I had the evidence, and I knew I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I told her she had to leave or I'd call the police. She shouted and threw a fit, but I wasn't backing down. Eventually, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The house was finally quiet, but I knew the worst was yet to come. That night, I stayed up late, going through every piece of evidence I'd collected. I wanted to be prepared for whatever legal moves she might make. I also started thinking about the property dispute with Jake. That land was supposed to be part of my inheritance, and I'd poured so much into that house. My father's money, my blood, sweat, and tears. Now she was claiming half, trying to take what I'd built. I knew I had to fight hard for it. The next morning, I reached out to my lawyer again. We discussed the situation, and he confirmed that I had a strong case to contest her claim on the house. I explained her attempts to say she deserved half, despite the fact that she had no legal claim to my inheritance or the house I'd built. He advised me to start formal proceedings, filing for divorce, claiming sole ownership of the house, and freezing the joint account to prevent her from draining it further. I agreed. I couldn't let her get away with this. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to spin her story. She kept calling me, begging, crying, claiming she'd changed, that she loved me and wanted to work things out. She insisted she was innocent of everything: Jake, the money, the affair. She claimed she'd only been confused, that she'd made a mistake. But I knew better. I'd seen her texts, her plans, her lies. I wasn't falling for her manipulation anymore. I told her I'd think about it, but in reality I was already moving forward with the legal process. I'd had enough of her bitchy antics. Then came the next bombshell. Without warning, she tried to claim that she'd been the one who paid for the house, that she'd contributed financially, and that she deserved half of everything because she'd helped build what I had. I was stunned. She was trying to rewrite history, trying to make herself look like some kind of co-owner. I told her flatly that she didn't contribute a dime to the house's construction. Her only contribution was her betrayal. That shut her up for a moment, but I knew she'd keep trying to spin her lies. I also started to dig into her finances more deeply. I hired a private investigator just to see if she was hiding anything else, another affair, more stolen money, or any other surprises. I couldn't trust her anymore. I needed to know if she'd done anything else shady. The investigator found some suspicious transactions, but nothing concrete yet. Still, the fact that she was hiding stuff made me more determined to cut her out completely. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel betrayed, angry, and a little lost. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for some neighbor dick and a quick cash grab. I kept asking myself how I could been so blind, but I also knew I had to stay strong. I had to protect what was mine, for my own sanity and for the future I still wanted to build, even if she was trying to tear it all down. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready to see it through to the end. The legal process moved fast once I had my lawyer on board. I filed for divorce, claiming sole ownership of the house, and put a freeze on our joint account. I couldn't risk her draining any more of the money she'd stolen, or trying to claim more than she was entitled to. That day, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I was finally taking control, but dread because I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. Lisa's reaction was even more manipulative. She showed up at the house unannounced, bitchy and demanding to speak to me. Her voice was sharp, her eyes cold. She accused me of trying to ruin her life, claiming I was controlling her every move. She insisted she loved me and begged for a second chance, saying she'd changed and that she'd never do anything to hurt me again. I just looked at her, feeling nothing but disgust. I told her she needed to leave, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore, and that I'd see her in court. She started crying, throwing a tantrum, and calling me every name in the book. She said I was breaking up our family, that I was jealous of Jake, and that I was trying to ruin her life. Honestly, I'd never seen her so bitchy and desperate. She was trying to cling to whatever shred of control she had left, but I was done playing her game. I told her if she didn't leave voluntarily, I'd call the police. That's when she finally stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I felt a strange sense of victory mixed with a lingering anger. Over the next few weeks, the court proceedings began. My lawyer worked tirelessly, gathering all the evidence I'd collected: texts, bank statements, witness statements from neighbors who'd seen her with Jake. We argued that her claims to half the house were invalid because she had no legal right to my inheritance, and because her affair and theft broke the trust that held our marriage together. I also filed to recover the stolen $200, which I was determined to get back. Every day, I felt more confident that I was doing the right thing, even as the emotional toll weighed heavily on me. Meanwhile, Lisa's bitchiness intensified. She tried to smear my name, claiming I was abusive, that I was controlling, and that I'd been cheating on her too, another lie, of course. She kept insisting she deserved half the house because she'd helped build it, which was laughable. Her attempts to manipulate the court and me only made me more resolute. I knew I was fighting not just for my property but for my dignity. One particularly nasty day, she showed up at my workplace, screaming and demanding I talk to her. She called me every name she could think of: a controlling asshole, a jealous bastard, a pathetic loser. She even accused me of cheating, which was the height of her bitchy tactics. I told her to leave and that I'd see her in court. I could see the desperation in her eyes, like she was already losing her grip on everything she'd tried to manipulate. That moment cemented for me that she was beyond saving, that her only goal was to destroy what little she had left of our marriage and steal what she could. The court date was set, and I prepared myself for the fight of my life. I knew she'd come at me with everything: more lies, more manipulation, maybe even some false accusations, but I was ready. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and a strong sense of what was right. The worst part was knowing that even if I got everything legally sorted out, the emotional scars would take time to heal. I'd lost trust, and I'd lost my sense of security, but I also knew I'd come out of this stronger, more cautious about who I let into my life. As I sit here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've learned. Never ignore the little signs of trouble. Never underestimate how far someone will go to get what they want. And most importantly, never let anyone manipulate your trust or your feelings, especially not for their own selfish gain. I don't know what the future holds now, but I do know one thing. I'm done being a victim. I'm taking back control and I'm moving forward no matter how bitter the road ahead might be. The court hearing was intense, but I stayed calm and focused. Lisa showed up, trying her best to look innocent, her bitchy smirk replaced by tears and desperation. She spun her usual lies, claiming she was a victim of my controlling behavior, that she loved me, and that she only cheated because she was confused and stressed. But I had all the evidence, her texts, her bank statements, witness testimonies from neighbors, and I laid it all out. Her attempts to manipulate the court fell flat. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. She was awarded full ownership of the house, and the court ordered her to return the stolen $200, $0. It was a huge relief, knowing I'd protected what I'd built with my own blood, sweat, and inheritance. Watching her reaction, her bitchy, furious glare felt satisfying but also hollow. I knew this was just the end of one chapter, not the healing of everything I'd lost. After the ruling, she tried to appeal, but her case was weak. I kept my distance, focused on rebuilding my life. I sold the house, which was a painful decision, but I couldn't stomach living in the place tainted by her betrayal. The money from the sale helped me pay off debts, recover some of what she stole, and start fresh. I also moved out of town, away from her toxic presence, and began working on myself. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown through this ordeal. I learned to trust my instincts, to never ignore the signs of betrayal, and to stand my ground when it mattered most. I also learned that some people are incapable of genuine loyalty, no matter how much you try to believe the best in them. Lisa was a manipulative, bitchy woman who thought she could control everything, including me, but she underestimated my resolve. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't let anyone gaslight you or make you doubt your worth. Keep evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Because in the end, justice might take time, but it does come. And when it does, it's a hell of a lot knowing you didn't let someone else's betrayal destroy you. I'm still healing, still rebuilding, but I know now that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible, and I won't let anyone take that away from me again.